In the name of God, why can't we give the Palestinian people some hope?
In the name of God, as others have said, please can we get aid into Gaza so that people will stop starving?
We need our government to recognise the Palestinian state.
Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war, and Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed before our eyes.
The Israeli government is making a mockery of international law, and we are enabling it.
This is a pariah government that's using starvation as a weapon of war.
Far-right Israeli minister has told a gathering in the occupied Palestinian territories that Gaza is to be entirely destroyed and Palestinians will be forced to flee in large numbers to third countries.
For many years, I've been in this house 20 years, I have supported Israel pretty much at all costs, quite frankly. But today, I want to say that I got it wrong. And I condemn Israel for what it is doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza and indeed in the West Bank.
Netanyahu cabinet has now approved an illegal plan to expand its military offensive to capture and occupy all of Gaza. This will put 1 million children at acute risk of starvation, epidemic disease and death.
I fear that if we do not recognise the Palestinian state, there will be no Palestinian state that includes Gaza left to be recognised.
But he can hear from all sides of the House, nobody is satisfied with the level of action the British government is taking. So I implore him again, listen to the support from all sides of the House, recognise a Palestinian state, impose a full arms embargo on Israel, sanction Smotrich and Ben Gvir.
Israeli government minister Smotrich said today that Gaza is to be entirely destroyed and its people to leave in great numbers to third countries.
Those of us on this side of the House stood on a manifesto to recognise the state of Palestine. Can I ask the minister, if not now, when?
The government has rightly imposed widespread sanctions on Russia. Why does it refuse to impose widespread sanctions on Israel?
The people of Gaza are being starved deliberately. They need full, immediate, unimpeded delivery of adequate aid.
Fail to call out collective punishment for what it is. Fail to call out war crimes for what they are. Continue to justify the sale of arms to Israel and find every excuse possible not to recognise the state of Palestine.
We now learn from a government minister, an Israeli government minister, that Gaza is to be entirely destroyed. And we're watching the live streaming starvation of an entire people.
All that we have is extremist settlers trying to force out Palestinian people from their villages in the West Bank, which I've seen with my own eyes. In the name of God, why can't we give the Palestinian people some hope? Why can't we give them the same right to self-determination and recognise the Palestinian state now?
When will he finally act to sanction those Israeli ministers, apply a full arms embargo, ban all settlement goods, and most importantly, to recognise Palestine?
The Israeli government's refusal to reopen aid routes is utterly unacceptable and contravenes its obligations as an occupying power.
Israel's cold-blooded murder of medics, of civilians, of UN staff.
To seriously consider sanctions against Israel if they pursue the wholesale removal of Palestinians from their homes.
In the past year, 100,000 tons of bombs have been dropped on Gaza, the equivalent of 5 times of the power of the nuclear weapons used over Hiroshima and Nagasaki 80 years ago. That's resulted in the death of at least 60,000 people.
But isn't the most practical step this country could take to recognise the state of Palestine in conjunction with other states as soon as possible in order to move the peace process on?
An Israeli human rights group has now described Israel as using starvation as a method of warfare. This is a war crime under Article 54 of the Geneva Convention.
What steps is the government going to take to put pressure on Israel to ensure it does not go ahead with its plan to move Gaza's population?
Given the catastrophe unfolding before our eyes, is it not worth resurrecting negotiations and discussions with international allies as to the possible airdrop of humanitarian aid
so that at the very least we can't say that we sat idly by and watched an entire population starve.
Does he, accept from voices across the House that the recognition of Palestine as a state would be imperative to work towards a lasting peace?
Constituents and we all continue to be horrified by the consequences of the assault on Gaza, the blockade on aid, and now the news this weekend of escalation. And they ask, if diplomacy is failing, then what comes next?
I asked the Minister whether the government will go harder, whether his government will come down hard in action and not mere condemnation to ensure that the world is not faced with a new and devastating refugee crisis.
Peace talks must be a priority for the region, and the need for food and aid to reach children is absolutely essential.
Given the ongoing horror, given the statement from the Israeli government, please will the Minister consider further concrete action?
These latest announcements show an Israeli government which I fear is out of control and making fools of us as allies.
And does he agree with me and the calls of this House that the time has come for significant action in the face of crimes that, had they been committed by any other country, we would have already done something about?
The long-term occupation of Gaza is entirely incompatible with a viable two-state solution and completely undermines any small prospect that we have for a lasting peace. A full-scale occupation of Gaza is, of course, inconsistent with international humanitarian law.
Does the Minister agree with me that Israel must immediately lift all restrictions on aid and allow unfettered access to humanitarian assistance in Gaza?
What specific action he is going to take on the proposed indefinite occupation by Israel of Gaza that risks eroding that sovereignty of the Palestinian people, sets an extreme precedent in international law, and ultimately jeopardises any path to a lasting peace.
Now we're facing a total collapse of the aid system in Gaza. Is it not time now to go further than words and take action against these extremist ministers who are advocating for this starvation policy?
To bring about a return of hostages and to bring about a credible peace process that results in two sovereign states.
Netanyahu said that the population may be moved for their own safety. Safety from whom?
We cannot be asking in years to come, what did we do to prevent a genocide, and for the answer to be not enough.